Okay, good. We got it. Okay, let's get started. So as usual, got questions? Just type them into the box, and we are going to talk about writing copy for lead generation. And I'm going to see how quickly this goes, because I have some other pieces that I'd like to throw into the mix. I'll see if I can integrate them in as we're working through this. So let's just dig in. So, and I've talked about this week in and week out, and you will be called on to be a consultant as a freelancer. And I think the best freelancers, if you're writing for clients, I think the best freelancers are the people who are knowledgeable, marketing savvy, and are really willing to go the extra mile and help people. It's one way to add value and to make yourself invaluable. And also, your writing's always better if you understand the process that the client is going through front to back. And I've learned over the years that there's nothing like asking questions. In the beginning, or years ago, I was always hesitant to ask too many questions, and now I actually, that's probably what I do, is err on the side of perhaps asking too many questions. And it's interesting what people don't know or haven't thought of. I just talked to a client the other day that wants me to write some web copy for a new business proposition, and so I said, well, what do you want? What do you want to happen? What do you want people to do when they read this copy? And he said, well, I want them to buy. And what he's trying to sell is a business opportunity that costs $1,000. And I said to him, in my experience, the likelihood of someone clicking and buying is slim. So you need other options for people. And I said, so what is your other option? Anyway, long story short, we walked through all of these things, and what he had set up, or what he had in mind, he realized just wasn't going to work. And so, I think in the past what I would have done many years ago is I would have just written it up and assumed that he knew or he understood. So it turned out from that the assignment got bigger, because we need to write more pieces, because there need to be more actions that people can take. So there really, in the end, there really are no stupid questions, I think, except the ones that don't get asked. So direct response, as you know, is all about results. It's generally writing to get people to do something, to take action. Now, that's not always true, because, and even as we've done some of the copy assignments, as we've been moving through the course, obviously some direct response copy is going to be content copy, and not copy that is only for results. But you can still write it in direct response way, which in many ways is more direct copy. It's more frank. It's more speaking to the person and still remembering everything that we've been talking about the benefit, and writing so that they see themselves in the copy, as opposed to this stodgy talking at them copy. But generally speaking, it's about measurable results. Unlike brand advertising or public relations, things that you do to keep your name in front of people. Direct response is nice because it's smart and it's measurable, and people can actually create a formula to gauge results, and ideally invest in more marketing and create a nice scalable business model where they can build business. I'm going to show you how to do that if you don't know, and particularly if your clients don't know. And very often they don't. And I shouldn't say particularly your clients. It's really it's just as relevant, or probably more relevant for you. But let's just take a look at how these equations work. So I used to do a lot of writing in the dental field. I haven't done so much in recent years. But the way that we would figure out metrics for a dentist is that a dentist estimates, and again, this is goes back 3-4 years ago. This may not be the correct number, but let's assume that it is. That a dentist estimates a new patient is worth $900 the first year. So over a lifetime, they spend more than that each year. And especially if they're part of a family, which is really typical. In writing the marketing, we found out that typically the entire family sees the dentist. It's a service, a professional service that's really often referred, and the lifetime value of a patient went up the longer the person stayed a patient. But anyway, so what the dentists that we're looking to do is acquire new patients, and putting in place from a marketing perspective a system to keep the patients, because you can't just assume that because somebody becomes a patient, they're going to stay a patient. And so, how do you market to existing people? How do you stay in touch? How do you build relationships? What's the marketing process there? But right now we'll get to the process. Right now we're just talking about the formula. So let's say, rounding up 900 and maybe accounting for a couple of years having gone by. So let's say they spend $1,000 a year for 15 years. And we know that typically people will spend more some years, less others, but the longer they stay, the more they're going to spend. So say they spend $15,000 over the lifetime of the patient, the lifetime that the patient is visiting that dentist. So if you have 100 patients like this, that means you make, that boils down to $1.5 million in 15 years, or $100K a year. So, there's other factors like, how many patients can be seen and how many hours are they, how many hours are there, and of course, there's all these other things to consider, like overhead expense and that sort of thing. But if we know that what we're looking for in terms of the marketing dollar value is what's it worth to spend a patient. So if your average patient is going to spend $100,000, is going to net you $100,000 in a year, what's the value of acquiring a patient? What would you spend to acquire a patient that's going to bring you that kind of income? And so that's the way to really look at marketing. And so we call that, figuring out the metrics, but it's also the value of a lead or a prospect or a patient. And so if you look at the cost to generate, and to understand that everything that you spend isn't just geared at one patient, it's geared at the group of patients. But what will you create? Are you going to do ads? Update your website, create collateral material, free reports, giveaways. I go through a book last year for a dentist. That was a whole other project in order to have a way. It's actually a prospecting tool to get people into their dental practice. So there's all kinds of things that can be done, but what you want to know is, what's the potential over time, and what's the value of a customer, a patient, or a client, and that gives you the formula of what's the cost to acquire. Now, you don't need, your marketing can cost you something. I mean, it's nice if you break even or make money on it, but what does it make you over the long term? And remember, the thing I've been saying repeatedly is the people most likely to spend with you are the people who have already spent with you. And so, what's the equation? What is the pattern? And, understanding the pattern helps you to influence the pattern. Because if you've, and we've talked about this most valuable commodity being a list or a database. And so, if we're still thinking in the, in this dental example, so there's a list of patients. If you're, an expression you hear often in marketing is to mine the list. So what can you do with that list of existing patients to essentially bring in or drive more revenue from that list? You might offer people an incentive for a referral. You might offer them some kind of a new service that's a cosmetic service that they might use if they don't need, regular maintenance or have some kind of a presenting issue. So there are all kinds of things that you can do, but it really helps to justify them, either yourself as a business owner or as a marketing copywriter, helping somebody maybe to justify your cost or to show them the value of, of having sophisticated and professional marketing is, what's the equation? What does it do for you, or how does it benefit you in the end run? And so what that boils down to is understanding the sales cycle, and it's different for everything, right? If I'm selling, cars, for example, people don't buy them all that often. If it's a high-ticket item, there's probably fewer of them sold, but then there's all these, ancillary items that get sold. If I sell a recurring service, if I say I'm a body worker, or I am a dentist is a good one, or a copywriter. and I'll just use my example as a copywriter. I have clients who buy copy from me every week, actually, and I have people that buy copy from me once a year or once or twice a year. And so in figuring my mix of clients to achieve the income that I want, I need to know how many of those of which type do I need, and how much do they make me? How much income does each generate, and how do I figure in the inevitable, consulting, hearing about their project, talking to them about what they do, that you typically do with a new client. You don't have to necessarily do it so much with an existing client because you already know a lot of those things. So how do you figure that out, and how can you track the metrics and understand them? And some people do this really well. Some people don't do it at all. And a lot of people have data and records that they could sensibly take a look at and build a pattern from it. And I have to tell you, I'm not terribly analytical, and I'm not a big details person. So this is not the kind of thing I'm going to sit poring over and have spreadsheets, and know everything down to the nth detail. Not that I don't think that's a good idea. I think it's a great idea. It's just not my cup of tea. And so someone's asking, can I put the mute bell on your PC? That's, actually that's people coming in and out of the call, and I don't know if I can mute that. And I don't know why it keeps ringing, because in theory, people should not be coming in and out from the number that I'm seeing. Let me just look here, because it is annoying. Let's see if chime control. There we go, *8. Try that.
Entry and exit chimes are off.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that, Pete, because I find it's a little disturbing. Good. So those are off. So anyway, I'm not suggesting that this isn't a good idea, and you can get as detailed and as drilled down as you want. But it's really good, to at least, in the bare bones, big picture, understand your metrics and the formula. And from a copywriting point of view, a freelance copywriting point of view, this can be a really helpful thing with your clients. Little caveat there, though. And I think I've said this before, but I don't think the best client is the client that has to be educated and sold that they need copywriting. An easier client to work with is somebody who already understands the value of your service. So sorry, I'm seeing. Okay. Okay. So tracking metrics means, every money-producing activity, cost of advertising, cost of staff, the sales generated, your profit, your repeat business. And what this allows you to do is integrate this with your marketing funnel, which we've talked about quite a bit. I mean, it's like you're putting everything, the reason they call it a funnel is so you're throwing a lot of stuff in at the top, and just a few people are going to come out at the end as somewhere in the middle where it narrows, they become prospects. They go from leads, which is anybody in the universe, to prospects. Those are the people that raise their hand and have some interest. To the people that come out the pointy end of the funnel are the people who are actually buyers. And obviously, there are fewer of those that are going to sift through and come out the other end. But important to understand, prospecting is a process. It's not an event. And this is one of the biggest faux pas that you see in marketing is, I like to joke that marketers are really good at finding something that works, working really hard to find something that works, and that, define that however you want. It generates prospects, generates leads, generates sales, and then they go, oh, that worked really well. What else could I do? What else can I do? Now, it's always good to be asking what else can you do, but you do that while you're doing what's working. Never stop what's working until it stops working. And things do. Things, stop working or need tweaking or changing. But you have to understand that prospecting is a process and not an event. And so it's something that you want to do long term, and that means really good follow-up and really good stick-to-itiveness and building those relationships that call for copy. And one of the things that I find, because I coach people, coach small business owners, and I find that one of the trickiest things for people is follow-up. They just don't want to do it, and partly because they don't want to bother anyone. That's usually one of the reasons. And the other reason is they don't want to hear no. But the truth is, if you can do it in a gracious and non-intrusive way so that somebody isn't being bothered. It's how good business gets done. I mean, it's how you show up being reliable, responsible, and and professional. And so I think it's an important thing to learn, and to learn to do it in a way that's comfortable for you. So if you create a process for yourself, you can generate more business. And if you help a client create it, you become indispensable to them, because it's true for your clients as well as it is, or as it might be for you, is that they don't follow up. They take this scattershot approach, and if it doesn't, they don't hit anything, they move over here and they shoot some things over here, and now they try sending out some messages over here. And the truth is, we know, people often don't take action until they see your message 7 to 9 times. And so what you want to do is keep in front of them, again, in a way that's that makes sense and isn't obnoxious. And Pete asks, do you like to call or do you email? I think you can do both. It depends what your style is. Some people just absolutely hate the phone. I like the phone. I've never been scared of it. With email, the thing that you have to realize is, you don't really know usually if people are getting it or reading it, and it's easy to think that they're not interested. And so you have to find a way to proactively stay in touch with them. And the same thing is true. People, don't necessarily return your phone calls, but sometimes there's a formula that people like, which is email, phone, email. You email them, and if you don't hear back, you call up and say, hey, I sent you an email just touching in, in case you can use anything. In case they're a phone person, they might pick up the phone and call you back, and then you send an email saying, hey, I sent you this, and I dropped you a message, here I am, I'll be in touch over time. And then you do it. Then you stay in touch over time. I can't tell you the number of people who have said to me, who have done business with me, because they've said, oh, you just stayed in touch. You were low key, no pressure, and I wasn't ready, but I knew when it was time you'd be there. I just picked up a client like that just this month, who I talked to I think last summer, and we talked at length. I actually spent probably 2 hours with him on 2 different occasions talking about his project, maybe even a little more than that. And I wrote up a proposal which was fairly detailed. I mean, I bet 4 or 5 hours was involved altogether. And then he just said, oh, we've got some tech issues to work out, and he kind of disappeared. And I just kept in touch with him. I just assumed that someday he would do it and someday he'd use me. And I sent him an email. I don't know. I look for little relevant bits. In fact, he was doing an app. One of his projects was he was doing a wine app, and so I found an interesting wine article about. I can't even remember what it was about, but anyway, it was relevant, and so I sent it to him, and he thanked me and really appreciated me keeping in touch. And then I sent him a little email in the new year wishing him well, and anyway, he called me last week and said, hey, thanks for being so gracious and staying in touch. I really appreciate that. Ready to start the project now. So, it could have been easy to think, I can't believe it. This guy wasted all my time. And he could have. I mean, it could have turned out that I have a couple of people like that who I've spent a lot of time with, and they disappear off the face of the earth. And I guess it all evens out. But you never know until you know. So that's a longer-winded story than I intended to tell. But there you go. So, we've talked about this before. Building a database is the most valuable activity. It's a saleable asset. It determines the value of some web properties and some businesses. I sold a business years ago in New York City, and it was all based on the client list. Didn't sell any of the equipment. There was a lot of equipment. It had a high dollar value. Everything was based on the client list, and it ended up being a really valuable commodity. Even though we didn't know at that time if all the clients would go with this new owner. It ended up being a really interesting and valuable commodity. So the database also is what allows you to build trust and credibility and do this kind of a follow-up process. We talked a little bit last week about how often do you email them, and what about sending a newsletter? And this is what offers you that opportunity, and to build loyalty. In the social media vernacular, to build followers. And to create customers and generate repeat business. And I think whatever way is comfortable for you, whatever thing you'll do consistently, I think is the thing to do. I mean, I know every once in a while it feels like, oh, everybody's marketing, fill in the blank on Facebook or using Twitter or, blogging or doing newsletters, and you feel, it can feel overwhelming, and it can feel like if you're not doing all of them, you're missing the boat. And I think it's best to just do what you know you can do and you can commit to and you feel comfortable with, because everything else is just going to feel like a hassle and it's going to be an energy drain. And one of the things that I always tell my coaching clients when they're trying to make a decision, should I do this, should I do that, does this make sense? One of the best barometers, I think, is how do you feel about it? How you think about some things and you just feel exhausted, like you just want to lay down and put your head down, and other things make you feel really energized. It's like, go with the things that make you feel energized. They're the things that you're going to be able to sustain. And if you pay attention, at least I find I have that reaction to almost anything, where I can tell, how I feel. If I feel excited about it, sometimes it can be your mood or your energy level. I get that, but I think overall you have this barometer that tells you which thing is probably the thing that you should be doing. And I know there's a lot of outside noise and there can be a lot of conflict, but I think you do best long term by doing, kind of what's yours to do, and not feeling like you have to be doing everything or everything else. And when it comes to marketing, and the basics still work. The media may change, but the message really hasn't changed very much. So drip campaigns, we've talked about this quite a bit. Making campaigns benefit rich and giving great stuff, really giving genuine value, keeping it short and to the point, but not worrying about the length. Make something as long as it's needed. And I find very often, when you're going to write web copy or emails or even a white paper, it can be very limiting if you decide the length before you start. I mean, sometimes things have to be said in a concise way, like in an email. And so, you can start long and then you can pare down and you can edit. But sometimes things just need to be the length they are. And concise is good, but if you get too hung up on making it short, sometimes you find you miss the meat. So you want to be careful to let things be the length that they need to be, so that so that they're long enough that you give genuine value. One of the thing that I wanted to integrate that I don't have in here, and I think I'm going to go there now and just talk about for a couple of minutes, is the idea of guarantees and removing risk. And so, we use this a lot in sales letters, and sales letters are one of my favorite things. Sales letters and web copy are really my favorite things to write. And a sales letter could be for the web, but often they're traditional direct mail. And one of the things that's really important is to always remove risk or remove perceived risk. And I talked about this a little, I think, in the first module. But what happens in this process, you write this great copy and you're leading people up to, to wanting what you have. You've piqued their, you've gotten their attention, you've piqued their interest, you've agitated the pot a little bit or stirred the pot, you've agitated the problem, which is this formula that we've talked about, letting them know that you understand them. You're writing for somebody who's balding and you let them know that you understand that they feel, don't feel as good about themselves, they feel less secure, they feel less attractive, whatever it is. And now you've come in with a solution that they, and you've offered proof and they believe it's a viable solution, and now it's time to buy and you've got an offer, and maybe it's just, buy the product, it's $30, or maybe it's, buy two and get one half off, or order by this time and get this discount, whatever your offer is. There's two things to pay attention to. One is offers with dates. Always get a response. Give people an incentive to take action. Do it by the end of the month. Use it by this date. Because we want to take action, but we put things off. We procrastinate. It's human nature. So if there's a deadline, we take action. So use that. Take advantage of that in your marketing. And then the other piece of human psychology that comes in there, besides procrastination, is the opposite of the procrastination is now they make the decision and they say, okay, I'm going to buy this. I'm going to take out my credit card. I'm going to spend that $30. And what happens right there is there's a little barrier to overcome, and that is the barrier of risk. What if this doesn't work? And it might not be so much the price, whatever the price is. It might not be that I am unwilling to part with my $30, but I'm unwilling to part with my $30 if this isn't going to work. Oh, I've bought this kind of thing before. Nothing else ever works. Why would this work? So you start going through all of the reasons that you shouldn't buy it. And so what you do next then is you remove risk. And you do that in the form of a guarantee. And so the guarantee is, if you're not completely satisfied, you get your money back, no questions asked. Now, what happens there is you're reassuring them that if it doesn't work, they won't lose their money. What they really want is something that works. But the second thing they don't want, though, is to feel a fool. So I spent my money and this thing's a piece of crap, and now I'm stuck with it and I'm just another sucker. So two things happen. One is I remove the risk and I don't think I'm going to be a sucker. The other is I think if you stand behind it, then it must be real. If you're willing, you couldn't give everyone their money back. So it gives me a sense of confidence and it removes the risk. So the other piece that you want to be aware of is show them right then and there. So it's one thing to say, money back, no questions asked. Just call our toll-free number 1-800-XYZ. If you put that right there, well, it seems kind of odd. It's like, why do they need the toll-free number to to return something they haven't bought yet? But what it does is it shows them it's really easy. Because I can tell you, well, you're going to get your money back, but it's like, we've all had this experience. It's like, oh, well, what does that mean? Am I going to have to, wait on hold for an hour? Am I going to have to write you a letter and send, some piece of the box and with the receipt and a copy of it, and this part has to be circled? I mean, we've all been there. And so what you want to tell them is not only do you want to remove the risk, but you want to show them it's going to be dead easy. Call 1-800. You'll talk directly to us. You're not going to wait online. Wait an hour. I mean, whatever you need to tell them. But what you want to show them is you want to remove the risk, and you want to show them that it's easy, so that they know up front. It doesn't mean that they're ever going to use it, but what it does is it reassures them that this is a good decision, and that's what your marketing wants to do. And I wanted to put that piece in there. We're going to go back to this, but we've talked a little bit about this last week, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide that maybe you've been staring at, the drip campaign frequency. But this is a formula that I've used pretty successfully myself and for clients, which is and this is this could be mail, by mail, but it's typically email. Whoops, my screen just went blank. Where'd it go? Oh, that was funny. Okay, so 3 times a week for 2 weeks, 2 times a week for 2 weeks, then once a week, and then you go to once a month, and you keep dripping on them once a month. And if you're wondering what this is for, this could be for an email campaign to sell something. It could be just marketing for a product or a service or a course. The opportunity to get in touch with them in between those frequencies, and obviously in the beginning you probably don't want to get in touch in between because you're already mailing pretty frequently, is any new news that you've got. Any reason to get in touch with them with something that's sort of breaking news. And again, sometimes people create breaking news just for an excuse to be in touch. It doesn't literally need to be new, like you have a new product or a new update. You can create new news. It can be anything. It can be an event. It can be a price change. It can be a special. You can, if you're careful with the metrics like we talked about earlier, you can know who's interested that didn't buy, and you can cycle back to them and say, see if offering the product for a lesser price or for a lesser price for a time period, lesser price with a time period with a risk reversal offer, will that get people to buy? What if out of a universe of X number you can get 10% more people to buy the product at a 20% reduction? What does that give you? So that's these are fun things to play with when you're creating campaigns and to test. And so every product, every giveaway, even free events, and I'm sure you've attended them, webinars. They're all designed to do something, and they all must have follow-up. But what you want to do is, even in your follow-up on giving content, you want to make sure that you give people that you give people a way to interact with the content, and so that you are building a relationship, but you're also, you're creating loyalty, and you're letting people know that you care about them whether they buy or not. It's not just about them buying. And that's how you build, that's how you build the loyalty and build the relationship, so that, eventually you have top of mind consciousness, and eventually, ideally they'll do business with you. Not everybody will, obviously, but from a marketing point of view, from a copywriting point of view, and whether it's, again, if it's for your own business or it's for a client, so much, I find, so much effort and energy goes into the actual event. So if someone's doing a webinar, and you've seen this formula, I'm sure, do a webinar before you, to give people a preview of what you're going to offer in a course. And so much energy often goes into that webinar and into creating the course, especially if it's a product launch, that sometimes the marketing gets left till last minute. And so this is a real value add if you're able to A, think through all the steps, and then present them as a plan for somebody, or for yourself, and you'll find that they repeat. And so once you know the pattern, this is, when I was saying earlier when we started, about asking questions, this is where you're really prepared, and you have the formula, and you have some real wisdom to offer on these, because it's, or on these kinds of projects, because they're, they're not unique instances each time, and they shouldn't be. So the other thing that you can do is you can segment your messaging, and this is it's a lot of copy to write sometimes, but it doesn't need to be that radically different. But if it is different, then people feel like you're really speaking to them. I mean, email is fairly impersonal, but if you do know a little bit about someone, whether they're a current buyer or whether they haven't bought before, you're writing a bit of a different message to them. And so if you don't overlap your messages and you write to that segment, then people, again, have that feeling that we've been talking about all along, that you hear them and you understand them. You're writing more to them, because you're not saying the same thing to a person who's familiar with what you do, as opposed to somebody who isn't, or what you do, or what you sell, or what your product is. And so, an interesting thing, a client of mine that I do a lot of writing for, and what they do is marketing to get people. Some of what they do is SEO to get website traffic, but it's a little more detailed than that. But what they did is they did a lot of testing with various clients, and they found that if they sent the exact same email 3 times, 3 days apart, and the only thing they changed was the subject line, they didn't put any body copy like that says, oh, I'm not sure if you saw this, or John, maybe you missed this, or I sent this to you earlier. All they did was change the subject line. They went from about a 9% open to about a 32% open, and not on the initial, but cumulatively. So they got almost 3 times as many opens, just they got a lot more mileage out of the same marketing. And they did that consistently over a long period of time with a lot of different clients, with a lot of different types of products and services. So that's a really interesting, an interesting little piece about repetition. How many times can you be in touch with someone the same message? Well, they've proved that you can certainly do it at least 3. And we've talked about the free report a little bit, and the fear of giving away your best stuff. I think it's an invaluable marketing message. Excuse me, I'm having a little sip of tea. And it builds trust. It provides value. I just saw something interesting that I hadn't seen before. And you have to be real careful with this, but he did a good job with it. It was a giveaway, but he managed to offer you a choice of giveaways. And I found it interesting because the first thing that he had on the list I wasn't interested in, but the second thing I was. You have to be careful because it can't be so many things that you get confused or overwhelmed or feel like someone's giving away the store. But it got me. It got me to, it got me actually to sign up. And I don't think I would have signed up for the first thing. So not only was he giving away his best stuff, he was giving away a whole bunch of it. So I thought that was an interesting thing. And you're saying, Pete is asking, does this assume the client is able to tell who is already a buyer versus a prospect or a lead when praying? Yeah, it does. and you can do that by segmenting your list. Some software programs, mailing programs, will do that for you. Some of it you have to do manually. Some of it, the higher end software can divide by a, by like sort of a decision trail, or that's not what it's called. I can't think of what it's called, but essentially it can tell based on an email, and all of this is set up in advance. So if somebody clicks on this and then goes here, now they're a prospect, or if they click here and they buy, now they're brought into a different sequence, and they're all created in advance. But you can certainly do it manually, and have different lists of people, and so that if somebody's bought or if somebody's expressed interest. And they may seem time-consuming, but in the end, it works better for the business, and it ends up making money. So structuring free reports, typically 7 pages is considered the minimum, and 7 to 12 pages is considered average. They don't have to be super fancy, but it's nice if they're designed. I mean, it's nice if it's not just a Word doc. And there's all kinds of different ones. It's a how-to, what you must know, 5 steps to, secrets of, 6 easy steps to understanding. And some of them, and I just wrote one for a medical practice that was fairly, it was fairly technical. But what it did is it gave them information on a technical change that's going to happen, and then I created a, sort of a blueprint, like 6, it is 6 easy steps, 6 things you can do to prepare for these technical changes that are coming. And it ended up being, I think it's going to end up being about 12 pages. And that was an example of letting something be the length it needed to be. Because originally I thought it ought to be short and kind of to the point, but it took 12 pages to explain all the changes and then talk about how to best prepare for them. Now, interestingly, and people ask this all the time, so I'll just answer it in case anybody's wondering. So, do white papers sell? Can you have sales copy, quote unquote, in a white paper? And the answer is yes. If you do it, you can do it in a way that's not blatant and salesy throughout, but you can do it in the form of providing the solution at the end. So in other words, if one of the challenges or questions that you raise during the process in the white paper, then you can come in and tell them, hey, this is how we solve it for you. And it wouldn't make sense really if you didn't. I mean, if again, it comes down to that idea that if somebody has a problem and you have a genuine solution, you should passionately want to solve their problem. And so there's no reason that you can't come in and say, hey, this is how we do it. I did one, I guess it was a couple of years ago. I wrote a fairly long white paper for a financial services firm, and we had to lay out all the things, but it really gave value. We did 8 things that you really need to consider over a lifetime, and pretty much in depth, and gave them some blueprints and some forms to plan. So the idea was, even if they didn't engage this firm, they got some planning value. They got some good ideas reading it, and then they got some planning value, and that there was a little sort of blueprinty thing you could use to figure some things out. But then in the end, the idea, I think of a lot of information products is, I can give you all the tools to do it yourself, and sometimes the tools to do it yourself are just enough to say, you know what, I don't want to do it myself. I proved to you my expertise by giving you the showing you how, but now you've seen how, and you realize that it really might be better to have a professional do it, because I get how to do it, but I don't want to do it, or I'm not capable, or I don't have the talent, ability, willingness, whatever. So lead generation online versus offline. Online, we've talked about this quite a lot, offer to consult or give away a service or product. And by the way, I'm not a big fan of giving your actual time away for free, like, as in a free consult, or I'll write something for you on spec. It's very hard to get people to pay for something after they've had something for free. I've just found that has not been a really successful formula. But the free report giveaway, and in terms of the copy to write, there's the capture box, there are the landing pages, there's SEO content, both video and written content that can work really well to generate leads. And again, it depends on what you're writing about or who you're writing for, but video can be a great way to drive traffic. And we talked about landing pages and driving traffic just to landing pages. And I think that's a really good strategy for video that doesn't just drive somebody to a site where there's a lot of options, a lot of things to read, and a lot of things to do, but drives them somewhere really specific so that you've got one message and that it's very, very streamlined. Offline, direct mail is, direct mail works. Sales letters, still really work. And in fact, I think they're experiencing a bit of a renaissance because so much has gone digital that, when something real shows up in the mail, I'm not suggesting you don't still get a lot of, junk in your mailbox, and, that seems to be mostly what I get in my mailbox. But if it's done well and it's targeted, and that includes, good envelope teaser copy that's really targeted to the person and to the person's problem, and a letter that's laid out with the kind of formulas that we've been talking about all along, they still work really, really well and very effectively. Postcards work well, and one of the things that we do commonly is like a 1-2 or a 1-3 punch, where you might send a postcard in advance of the letter, like a postcard saying, hey, something's coming, then a letter, and then a postcard saying, hey, did you read it? Or sometimes it can be, people change up the order of those. The advantage, obviously, to a postcard is they get looked at. They don't need to get opened. And think about it, when you get a postcard in the mail, you kind of hold it in your hand, you look at it, you might flip it over and look at it. So you get, you get someone's attention for at least the few seconds that they'll glance at it, and you can come up with a compelling headline and get some traction with postcards. Ads work, radio works, television works. I mean, all of the offline methods work, and you can use them to direct people, to brick and mortar. You can use them to direct them online. You can use them to direct them online for a brick and mortar. There's any or all of these possibilities exist and are viable. There's something I wanted to say about a sales letter. Let me just think for one sec. Sorry about that. I thought of it while I was saying it. I thought I want to tell you this, and now it's gone out of my mind. Oh, I know what it is. One of the things that you've probably seen, and there's some really cool things that you can do, in the category of what's called lumpy mail. And lumpy mail is, any envelope that's got hand feel. It's got something in it. It's got a pen in it, or it's got a little toy, some car or something or other. But you feel there's something in the envelope, so you open it. Because part of the job of, or part of the problem with direct mail is getting the darn thing opened. If someone opens it, chances are they'll look at it. But are they going to, put it aside till later and then recycle it and forget about it, whatever you want. So if there's something there, that they can feel, of course you want to know what it is, so you open it. So that's, lumpy mail works really well. But there's some cool stuff that you can do too. You can mail anything. Anything you can put a label on, you can put in the mail. I got a letter a couple of years back that came in a pill bottle. Lots of potential good headlines for a pill bottle. Actually, I'm about to do, for this medical firm that I'm writing for, we're about to do a mailing that we'll probably put, we're going to do a three-letter campaign. I'm probably going to put one in a pill bottle. I think we're going to put another in a bank bag. And I'm not sure what we're going to do with the third one. But, anything that gets attention gets opened. And so, that's something to think about with direct mail, because, what you say in the letter obviously is really important, but if nobody looks at it, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. So there's some clever things that you can do. And I see the pill bottle, I hadn't seen that before. I had that one sitting on my desk for about a year. I finally, took it off, but now I'm going to have a chance to use it. So I kind of think that's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to seeing the results. Seeing the results we get with the pill bottle and the bank bag. But that's just something to keep in mind. And it's a good thing to have, have up your sleeve, either for your own mailings, or for a client. But the thing to remember too is, it depends, going back to that metrics and the formula, going back to metrics and the formula, you don't want to spend a ton if, it depends on what the value of the customer is. If you can have a really targeted list, like for this particular firm, they've got a very targeted list, and a new customer can mean tens of thousands of dollars for them in any given year. And so, to buy a bank bag, and we were even talking about putting $10 bills in the letter, and saying, if you don't do this, you might as well, set fire to it. Like maybe even putting like a wooden matchstick in there. Set fire to this $10 bill if you don't pay attention to this. And the reason we'll do it is because it'll get attention. And so, if we end up spending $15 or $20 per prospect on this really targeted list, what they know is they really want to get one or two new clients, and they've got a budget for it. So if they, if we do this carefully and correctly, they should be able to get the result that they're looking for there. So just something to consider and kind of fun. Let me just see before I move on here and get to wrapping up. Pete has a question, but do you do free consults in order to write up your brief for new? Yeah, I do. And I don't consider them really, or maybe I shouldn't say I don't consider, kind of don't think of them as free consults. And I sometimes even build them into the billing, or build them into my proposal. And so, but I don't always. And so what I mean there is, it's like, I'll just give you an example. I had a guy who runs a law firm called me 10 days ago. And I think he might be one of my disappearing people. But he called me, and he had a very specific marketing campaign that he wanted to run, and we probably spent an hour of him going over what he's done before, what worked, what didn't work, what he's looking to do now, why he wants to hire a copywriter, how he found me, why he thought I might be a good fit, asking me questions. In my mind, that's the cost of doing business. It's not something that I was going to bill him for. Another example, and what I mean by that is build it into my proposal, because I don't bill hourly, I bill by the project, and so, or propose by the project, and then I guess bill by the project. So I have another prospect that called me, and apparently he sent his associate to sort of vet me first, and I spent an hour on the phone with the associate, not knowing whether he was an owner or a partner or what, and then he said, well, I'd really like you to have you speak to the owner to just clarify some things. And I said, okay, sure. And so we made an appointment with the owner. Now I spent an hour with the owner. And all in all, it's not a huge project. So I built some of that. I've already sent them a proposal. I built some of that time in my mind into the proposal, because I felt like that was a really big investment of time for the relative size of the project. And 2 hours is a lot of time when you only have so many hours in the week that you can write copy and make money. So hopefully that answers your question. This is a little side note to lead generation, but testimonials are always important, whether it's on a website, in a sales letter. I mean, anything you can do where you can say, hey, this happened for Barbara, and this happened for Joe, and here's what could happen for you. I find that it's really important to ask for testimonials in the moment. If someone says, you're finishing a project and they say, thanks, great job, or you're in the middle of the project and they say, wow, you really get it, you really understand me. I make a note of that. I never ask for a testimonial until a job is done. But if someone says something, I'll say, hey, we were talking, about this part of the project, and you said, I really, just read your mind or whatever. I'm just wondering if you'd be willing to, write up, a couple of things you thought. And what I always offer, I may have said this before, but it bears repeating, I believe. I'll say to people, and I said that to this client, if you want to write up a few bullets or shoot me a couple of bullets, I'm happy to write something up for your approval that you can sign off on. Because that way I figure they don't have to sit down and write something. They're happy to shoot a couple of bullets, and usually people do. They'll shoot a couple of bullets and I'll form them into paragraphs, and I try and make it not sound exactly like me so they don't all sound like I wrote them. And send it back for their approval and ask them if I can use a photo. And often, in the copy process, there's a photo they're providing for something, or they've got a photo in their SIG file or whatever, and I'll ask them, or if they have a photo on LinkedIn or something, can I pull that and use it? But I find it's really good to ask people in the moment, because it's tempting not to, and it's really hard to go back later and have them muster any enthusiasm for doing it, or they've forgotten, or they're not feeling all as enamored with you as they did when you're finishing the project and they're feeling really happy. So whether it's for you or for a client, the second someone says something good, say, gee, I'd really like to use that. Could I use that? Could I use that on my website? Would you mind? and and just get good at gathering those, because they go a very long way toward creating proof and credibility. And so make sure that you pay attention to that. So here's my famous 3 rules of marketing: test, test, and test. And practice. Experience will inform the process. But if you can write this kind of direct response copy for lead generation, you can really help any business to grow, including your own. And you're not always going to hit it out of the park the first time, but the fun thing is, if you're writing for the web, or you're writing emails, it doesn't cost much to do it, so you can test things and find out what works. But it's really a valuable process to be able to do this kind of relationship building, where you can provide value and really speak to the heart of the matter, but keep all along the way asking people to do things and asking people to take action, because what you don't ask for, typically you don't get. Sometimes people are motivated and they'll take action on their own, but you don't want to rely on that ever. And so the whole crux of direct response marketing is the CTA, or the call to action, and to constantly be giving people an opportunity to take action. There's nothing more frustrating than wanting to take a next step and not knowing what it is, or going to take a next step and then having it be difficult or convoluted. So all of this is leading up to getting people to do something. And so be sure that you make it really easy, A, for them to know what that is, and B, for them to do it. And so continually, ask them what it is that you want them to do. And this particular type of copywriting, direct response to generate leads, is really in pretty high demand. And a lot of people use it, and some people use it really effectively, and some people just write this kind of copy. And you see calls for it all over the place. People looking to to bring in, or to at least have people raise hands and say that they're interested, so they can begin this marketing funnel process. And if you think about it, and you think about how what your patterns are like when you get interested in something. I mean, sometimes you need something and you have to buy it. You have to buy it right away because you have one and it broke, or because you needed something to get the job done. Or, but with a lot of things that we buy or make decisions about, it's a process. And I might get interested in something and they go, well, I don't know if I really need that, or I want to spend money on it, or will I use it? And then something comes in and it gives me another use for it, or another way I could use it, or another reason that my life will change if I use it. And I'm like, geez, I would like to have that, I think, but I don't do it. And then something else comes in, and I say, and so I move along the process to where now not only do I maybe want it more because I'm thinking about it more, it's got more top of mind consciousness, but I've been sort of wooed. I've been courted by the marketer. And it works. So, I just remind you, because I get asked this sometimes, I don't think any of this is about being aggressive or in your face or manipulative. I think these techniques work really well because they're direct, and a lot of people in their marketing are not direct. But, the premise here is that there's something of value. We're not just trying to put stuff in front of people for the heck of getting them to spend money. It's because there's something that really solves a problem, or really improves somebody's life, or offers value, or makes a job easier, or makes life easier, or more enjoyable, or whatever it is. And so, if that's true, what we're doing is sort of moving through the psychological paces to get people to believe that, and then get them to do something about that. So, with that said, this week's assignment, should you choose to accept it, is to outline an opt-in sequence for lead generation. So it's more of a plan than copywriting, although you're certainly welcome to write something. But how would you create a marketing funnel? I mean, say I came to you and said, I need more clients for my copywriting business. And I may tell you I have a certain budget, and I may not, and you don't know, but I've got a website and I've got a free paper that I can give away, and I think I know my niche market, but I need more people, inquiring or more people asking, and what could I do? And this is, you can put together a blueprint in a general sense for anyone, or you might start along this process and then say, geez, there are things I need to know. And I have a questionnaire I send out to people, that asks them really about, what's their unique selling proposition, and, who are they different from, and who are their competitors, and who are their competitors that they admire, and who are their competitors that they don't like, and, what do they like about them, and what don't they like about them, and what do they like about their marketing, and what don't they like about their own and about their competitors. And so you might realize somewhere in there you need something like that, or you need to know this or that. But it's good to figure it out, whether it's for a client or for your own business. It's like, what are all the pieces, what are all the moving parts here? Because once you know them, it's not that you master them by knowing them, but once you know them, you see that it has a logical progression. And I think one of the things that's really helpful as a copywriter/copywriter consultant is to be able to say to somebody, listen, here's how it typically works, and this, have you considered this, and here's what you want to do. Now, it doesn't mean that somebody's going to do every single thing or is going to hire you to write all the copy pieces, but I think you're better served and they're better served to lay out what all of the things are, because it can be really challenging for you as the writer. And I had an example of this. I wrote a couple of sales letters for a guy who has an interesting insurance product last year, and I really wanted him to do the whole funnel. But he had some ideas, and he had this list, and he, if he got these letters and he sent them to this list, he was going to do this, this, and that, and and that's fine. I mean, I'm happy to write the letters, and he can do what he wants with them. But then he was really disappointed because it turned out that the list wasn't responding to this particular idea that he had. And I wanted to go back and sort of revamp, and I did. I revamped it for him a little bit, but I wanted him to look at the bigger picture, and he really didn't want to. And where that's frustrating for me is I want the guy to get results. I'd like this, he paid me good money for this. I'd like it to be useful for him and to grow his business, sort of the same way we're talking about features and benefits and, selling products to people. So I think if you can, it doesn't mean you can influence what people do. They're going to do what they want to do anyway. But I think if you can provide them with the big picture, it can be really helpful. And obviously, if you use it for yourself in your own business, you're more likely to do it in an organized fashion instead of, you push this out and push that out and try a bunch of ideas, which, is really typical of entrepreneurs. And I'm certainly guilty of it myself. I have made a very concerted effort in the last, not very long period of time. I'm changing some of my marketing strategies, and I am forcing myself. I've made a plan, and I'm forcing myself to follow it, which is not easy for me because I get ideas. I want to go over here, and I want to go over there, and it's like, nope, come back, do this, do this, do this. So I think that's where this can really be valuable. So that's it. Let's just see, does anyone have questions? I see, Pete, you have a question. Is this lead gen or lead nurturing? So I'm not sure which thing you're talking about, because you were probably asking that in regard to something specific. So go back and ask me that. And I see you have another question. Do you help new clients with things like MailChimp and Aweber or production of nicely designed copy? I don't. I have a designer that I really like, and I refer people to her. I introduce her to people that, like I have a client I'm working with right now, and I said, here, let me introduce you to, and I'll help. I mean, I know this designer, so I can sort of, if I have a vision of something or I need something done, we can work together. I don't do that, and I don't do stuff like go in and, I have a client that I did some writing for whose stuff was in MailChimp, stuff they had used, and I went in there and got it. But I did that years ago. I'd upload stuff into WordPress or MailChimp, but I just don't now. It's just not. I just find it's not worth my time, and I don't have somebody good to refer for that. I haven't needed it, but it would be. I think it's good to have those people. I try not to project manage, and I try and be really clear about what I do or don't do. But I found it was not it wasn't a good use of my time, and I can't get paid enough for it. I can get paid much more to write copy, and it's too expensive for them to pay my fees to have me do that stuff that they could pay less for, and so I just don't do it anymore. Anything else? Okay, Pete, you say, I mean strategy for putting things through the funnel. Is the lead gen the process of getting people to opt in and the nurture of those? Yes, exactly. You're spot on. That's exactly right. So, so the lead gen initially is to find people who, who will raise their hand and be interested. And there's any numbers of ways to do that. I mean, you might be working with a list, or a bought list or a rented list, or you may be doing, any number of things. But it's to generate interest. And then as you have interest, it's to nurture those people along. And some of them, may never become paying customers, and some of them may, but it's to build a relationship with them, because you never know. People who don't spend money with you might refer other people who do, or might eventually. They may not need what you have now, but they have a mild interest. They may have a real need down the road, or a stronger interest. So yes, the answer is you got it. Anybody else? Anything else? Okay. Good deal. So thank you for all the great copy that everyone's been sending. I've just been really having fun with what you've been sending. So keep it coming. And next week we're going to talk about we're going to wrap up talking about the business of being in business. And so if anyone has anything specific that they'd like to know, I mean, one of the things I get asked a lot is about choosing a niche, or should I choose a niche, or marketing. I know there's a number of people in this particular session who have their own businesses, and so you're not so much taking this course to launch a freelance copywriting business. So it can be anything else about your business or marketing in relation to your business. But if you have anything and you want to send it to me by email or post it on Facebook, I've got content prepared, but I like it to be kind of an open session too. So any questions you've got can be answered, and it can also be any questions about anything that we've done to date, because it's the last session, and I want it to be most useful for for you and what you want to know. So if there's anything that you want to know and you'd like me to address it, just give it to me in enough time so that I can think about it, which would be, by Monday, maybe Tuesday at the latest, but ideally by Monday, and I will do my best to address it. I have one more question, two more. Harrison wants to know, so I know you can all see this, but I'm reading it. So is the lead gen basically leading into the email marketing campaign? This would be the previous step in order to write the emails we did last week. Yes, that's correct. That's absolutely correct. And so, yes, I may say more about that, but yeah. And sometimes the lead generation, like I said, I mean, the lead gen can happen offline, even to go online. I mean, one of the reasons to do these nurture campaigns through emails, because they're super inexpensive, right? I mean, before email, we used to do them, they were all direct mail, and they were costly, and they had to be very strategic, and they were near impossible for people who didn't have a budget. I mean, the cool thing about the internet is anybody can market to anybody, and if you're clever and strategic, and particularly if you're consistent and persistent, you can reach a large number of people. Everyone's out there to be reached, and so there's a lot of clever ways to actually find people who are interested, and then to nurture them. Do you ever go for cold email marketing, i.e. campaigns to people who haven't opted in? I did years ago, really successfully. It's way harder to do now. I mean, what you can do is email people one at a time. I mean, and write them. And it depends on what you're marketing for. It's really hard to send email now to large lists of people. And maybe you're not talking about large lists, but I wouldn't send like an ongoing email to people that haven't opted in. I might, like if I had someone I wanted to opt in, I might send them something and say, hey, here's something I think would be of interest to you, and here's a first piece, opt in if you want more. I mean, you can do those kinds of things, but it's gotten really hard to do. But cold email to an individual, and we talked about this, Pete, because specifically a couple of weeks ago, you and I did, an email to somebody to interest them in what you're doing, absolutely, and it works great. And I asked, because I've been researching for local businesses using Infusionsoft, and I have a list of contacts from that. I'm not sure what you mean. You've been researching for local businesses using Infusionsoft. What do you mean? Let me do this. Let me open this up because I believe you're on the phone and you can just ask me. I'm happy to answer, but I'm not sure what you're asking. So I think
These are muted. These are unmuted.
everyone should be unmuted. I talked about Infusionsoft as a possible good niche. So what are you asking?
Oh, hi. Can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, yeah. I think it was probably on the email week, you did mention Infusionsoft as a good, it does email campaign management, and a lot of people get all the technology to set them up but need copy to keep the funnel, the content engine filled on the autoresponder campaigns that they can set up. So I, went around and looked for all the companies I could find locally. I looked at some directories and things, and also on the Infusionsoft website to find people who I could contact. So I thought I would send, but I guess I see what you say. It's not a really large list, so I could send individual emails to ask about interest, but not do like a constant blast of an email a week or something unless people respond back.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really clever, actually. And there's some other ways you can drill down and maybe even build relationships with techies who do the Infusionsoft technology stuff that you might refer and they might refer you. So I think it's a really good market. And I would just contact those people and and market to them. And you could even offer. I think it's always good when you send one of those emails to offer a free report, because that, in essence, opts them in. So give them an opportunity to opt in. Hey, I write for Infusionsoft, and or I write autoresponder campaigns, and I've got a, I've got a free white report, writing, best tips for writing for autoresponders, and if you'd like to check it out, whatever. I mean, that's not what you'd say exactly, but, and then that gives them a chance to opt in, because when they go to whatever page they go to opt in for the report, it says, like it typically does, that they might receive periodic things, or you can even put that in the thank you email to them. Hey Pete, thanks for requesting my report, Profit from Email Marketing. You might hear from me periodically with other tips and things you can use to improve your blah blah blah, fill in the blank. And so now, in essence, you've gotten them to opt in, kind of from a cold prospect, or from a cold prospecting point of view, but one-on-one. Or if you're not offering a free report, would you like, tips periodically on how you can improve your autoresponder and get more bang out of from your Infusionsoft buck? Because I'll tell you, I personally have 3 clients who are spending the $300 a month for Infusionsoft and they're hardly using it because they're overwhelmed. But they'd sure like to get more out of it because they know they're paying for it.
Okay, thanks.
You bet. How nice to talk to you too. Okay. Cool. So that's a wrap, everybody, unless anyone else has a question. Good deal. Thanks for being here. See you on Facebook.